And now today we have with us Invasive Species Council of BC. Um, and they're going to be talking about a whole variety of different things, but it is going to be focused on Lower Mainland's most wanted, which is invasive species around the Lower Mainland and what we can do about it, why they're important, all that jazz. Invasive Species Council has worked with us in the past. As you can see in our background here, we've got a few murals that we worked on last year and all that. So yeah, they're a great program partner, and I'm gonna let them do most of the talking today. And so I'll start off with that. I'll just introduce myself. My name is Rafa Narciso. I go by he, him pronouns. I'm calling in from territories of Tsleil-Waututh Nation and Musqueam Nation. Most people know it right now as Burnaby Lake Park, which is our headquarters, CTS. And so that's where we kind of start. And I'll start off by just introducing, giving it off to Corbin Manson from British Species Council, kind of get us going.
Thanks, Rafa. Yeah, really excited to be here today. Thank you so much to Catching the Spirit for hosting us. We're thrilled to kind of give you an introduction to all things invasive species today. As Rafa said, my name is Corbin Manson. I use he and him pronouns, and I'm coming to you today in downtown Vancouver in the West End. So next up, I'm going to hand it off to Caitlin Bassat.
Thanks, Corbin. My name is Caitlin Bassat, and I'm the Kamloops Youth Facilitator with the Invasive Species Council of BC. And the pronouns that I go by are she and her. And I'm really excited to be part of this event today and to talk about what a BioBlitz is. And then I'll also be running the breakout room for invasive species art. So thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Willie, and I'm the Indigenous Liaison for the Invasive Species Council of BC. I'd also like to do a land acknowledgement, even though virtually we're all presenting from different places. I think we have Corbin and Raf, Vancouver area on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, the Squamish, Stalo, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. Caitlin is on the ancestral land of the Secwepemc people. Brittany over in Revelstoke is on Secwepemc, Silks, Tenaha, and Snext people traditional lands. And I'm up in Pemberton, and I'm on the traditional ancestral lands of the Statliam and Lilwat people. And I'll be doing some medicinal workshop stuff later. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie. We also have Brittany Loudon with us from the Invasive Species Council as well, taking care of a lot of the technical side of things. If you have any technical issues today, any slowdowns, please feel free to speak up if you need us to repeat anything. And you can also message Brittany for tech support related things. So I think I'm going to take a couple minutes here to explain a little bit about invasive species. So let me just pull up my presentation. I'm going to start screen sharing that. Okay, so why are they called invasive species anyways? This is why we like some species but not others. As I was saying before, my name is Corbin Manson with the Invasive Species Council of BC, and we are an organization that is based on collaboration and partnership. So we work with partners across the province, across the country, and internationally as well to prevent and reduce the spread of invasive species. We also do a lot of education and outreach, training with professionals, and so forth. We're a founding member of the Canadian Council on Invasive Species as well. So this is invasive species is our big focus. We're very involved on multiple levels, and you know, now's a good time to ask, well, what does it mean? What are invasive species? So there's a few vocabulary terms that I'm just going to run through real quick here. It's good to be clear about the difference between a native species, which is something that doesn't need help to survive in an area and has historically been there for a long time. It is also able to spread or reproduce in that area naturally. There are then species that are non-native, and non-native species have been moved to an area by people. They may be able to sustain themselves and they may be able to reproduce, but they tend to be dependent in some way on human cultivation, versus invasive species, which have been moved by people and then are able to escape cultivation and spread in a way that's harmful to the environment, to people, or to the economy. So that's a lot of words, all just to say that we've got 3 different categories of species. What we're looking at here is a gray squirrel, which is an invasive squirrel. So it's been moved from Western Europe, introduced to the West Coast here, and displaces our native red squirrels. So that's how I know that's an invasive. This is a native sword fern, and this is a species that historically has been found on the Pacific Northwest coast for many thousands of years, and established here, reproduces naturally. Sword ferns are a native species. Finally, many of you, especially if you're from the Lower Mainland, might recognize this. Give you a second. If you haven't noticed already, this is corn. So corn is not necessarily native to the Pacific Northwest, but it is native to South and Central America, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And has been introduced widely across North America and in different parts of the world as a staple crop. So this one is beneficial to us, but it's definitely not native, which is why we make the why we bother to distinguish between invasive and non-native species. So this is just a quick summary of the 2 differences I outlined. I think the last point on either of these, whether you're looking at this orchid or at this bullfrog, the last point, non-native species often can add diversity to an area, whereas the presence of invasive species is associated with a reduction in diversity in many cases. So you see something like Himalayan blackberry move in, and not only is it going to shade out a whole bunch of other plants, but then it's also going to change the amount of bird habitat that's available. So you're going to have fewer plants and fewer birds in an area with Himalayan blackberry because it reduces diversity. And so some species are better invaders than others. And why is that? So here is a list of traits for potential invasiveness. And things like species that grow in disturbed areas. So a lot of invasive species spread along roadsides or in areas where people have been working. They're transferred by people and they like that sort of churned up soil, disturbed areas, quick spread. The next one too, few predators or diseases. This is kind of what gives them the edge often over native species, is if they can't get sick or there's nothing out there trying to eat them, then they, unlike native species, can just kind of grow unchecked. They're easy to move. Maybe they clone themselves as well so that they can, they don't need to mate to spread, which can be an aid at some points as well. So that's a really quick surface level summary of what invasive species are all about. We really encourage people to report them when you see them. So once you've learned what invasive species look like, if you identify them, there's an app available for free on both Apple and Android devices, Report Invasives BC, that you can use. And these reports actually go directly to provincial government biologists, and they check out, you need to include photos, and you can use some data about where you are, your GPS data, and by reviewing the photos or actually going and doing a site tour, then they can determine if the invasives you spotted need to be taken care of. If you'd like to take action but don't want to just do it on a smartphone app, you're also welcome. We invite you to come volunteer with us. We have a pretty exciting volunteer program working with youth between 15 and 30 at the moment, and we are focusing on a virtual approach like we are right now in the midst of COVID-19, but also look forward to returning to in-person stewardship as well. So that's it for my 101 summary there. And I'd like to ask at this point if anyone has any questions before we move on. You're also welcome to drop them in the chat box at any point. So yeah, please feel free to speak up and ask questions or drop them in the chat box. I wanted to take a brief moment before we move on just to double check that everyone is in their preferred breakout room. had signed up for it. During the registration, you had a choice between neighborhood stewardship, invasive species art, or medicinal plants and protecting them. And so if you are unsatisfied or didn't have a chance to select your preferred room, please just let us know in the chat box and we'll make sure that you are in your preferred breakout room. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Caitlin to talk a little bit about the BioBlitz guide and email that you would have received.
Thanks, Corbin. So when you registered for this event, you may have seen that there was a link for the CTS BioBlitz document. So in that document, there was a brief explanation of what a BioBlitz is and how to actually go out and do one. So I'm just going to talk about that briefly. So BioBlitz, I love them because they're simple, because anyone can go out and record observations. So don't be put off if you don't know what you're taking a photo of. When I was out last weekend, I saw many plants that I could not identify, but I took tons of photos. And the great thing about most of these apps is you can input your photo and it will actually give you suggestions on what the species is. And then that's how I learn. I get the suggestions and then I also reference in my plant ID books, and that's how I'm extending my plant knowledge. So not only is it great for building your own knowledge about the nature in your local community, you're also helping researchers, because the great thing about citizen science is this data is often used by biologists to do research in different areas. So it's just a great way for all of us to be out with our families or by ourselves, but still contributing together as a whole in all these different ways right now, with all of us not able to gather in big groups. So if anyone has any questions about the BioBlitz activity, definitely ask away, or you're welcome to put a question in the chat and I'd be happy to answer them. And then if not, I will pass it over to Corbin and we can talk about our breakout rooms. I see Leo has a question there. Does it count as citizen science? Yeah, definitely. So today we're learning about citizen science and we're building up our knowledge. So yes, anytime that we're getting involved in science and learning more or making observations is definitely totally counts towards it. So great question, Leo.
That's such a great point, Caitlin. I think it's, you know, the term scientist can be intimidating to people, and you think, oh, I need to go to school for a long time, but making good observations is a skill that every scientist needs to have. And so, yeah, you can become more of a scientist yourself just by going out there and observing the world, or learning about observing the world too. So at this point, we're going to move to our breakout rooms. We're breaking into small groups to discuss our preferred topics. And so each room is going to have a slightly different format. The facilitators are going to run through how their presentation or their workshop is going to work. And each room is going to need a representative as well. So someone in the room, you'll have to pick off the bat who's going to report back 1 to 2 minutes on what the room was like, what you talked about. And that person doesn't necessarily have to be taking notes. You can also have someone else taking notes, but I'll let your facilitators figure all that out for you. So at this point, there's one last point I need to make here, actually. There is going to be an ask for help button. So because we're breaking into different rooms, if you have any sort of technical issues, and Rafa or Brittany's not in the room there with you, you just need to hit ask for help, and we'll send someone over right away to make sure that you can participate. So with that, I'll ask Rafa to invite us into the different breakout rooms. And just a reminder to the facilitators too, to record your individual rooms.
All right, y'all, have fun.
Hey, I'm Damien. I'm a volunteer with the Stanley Park Ecological Society and the Invasive Species Council. And I'm working on some neighborhood stewardship projects right now, so thought I'd hop in and see what's going on.
Yeah, I'm really glad you could join us, Damien. I hope you don't mind sharing a bit about the work you've been doing, because I think everyone...
Oh, I'd be glad to.
And So Ella, I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself and share with us, but of course there's no pressure to do that, and I can move forward for now. So yeah, and my presentation, really, I want to start with the word stewardship. And so I've got some slides, but I think they're kind of, it's just the sort of thing I want to talk about anyways. There's not a ton of photos or anything, so I don't think I'll bother with the slides. But talking about stewardship, it's easy to, or not easy, but the way that I like to think about stewardship is it's a type of responsibility. And stewardship and ownership are kind of on this spectrum together, where they're both different types of responsibility. And I think of stewardship as an answer to the question of like, why would I want to take care of something that doesn't belong to me? And now, you know, there's a lot of value systems out there where you don't even have to ask that question. But I do think that, you know, growing up where I have, that's certainly something that comes to mind for me. And so stewardship is this idea that you can sort of collectively enjoy the benefits from something as a society, as a group, and sort of tend to those benefits, care for that place in a way that or for that thing in a way that makes sure you continue getting those benefits. So to make that specific, if you go and pick up garbage in the park is always going to look nice, right? Even though you don't own the park, you're still sort of, you're investing yourself in benefits for others as well as yourself. I do have a YouTube video link. I'm just going to share in the chat here. And this is some great examples of stewardship that have been going on in the city of Vancouver. So I find screen sharing videos through Zoom to be a bit slow. So I've got the video there you can open up, and it's a 4-minute video. So I'll say in about 5 minutes, hopefully.
I have my own cultural, spiritual beliefs. I always put down tobacco, but I think the most important thing is just that you're respecting nature. And one of the ways we do that is that we respect that the pitch is also medicine for the tree. So it has antibacterial properties which prevent the damaged tree from getting infected. So it basically works the same way for trees and people. So that's what it looks like. I'm going to play a short video for some reason. I did last time. Crystallized and yellow. You don't want it to be too white. You can hear?
I can hear you.
Get like just keep the container underneath. Okay, so was that fairly clear?
I couldn't hear it super well, Willie, but
Okay.
I got the visuals, which was good.
Okay, yeah. So I'll just kind of like we're looking for the like crystallized sap basically that's on pine trees. And yeah, we never want to take too much from one tree. We want to go to a different tree. And we don't want to dig into the tree to get it out. We want to just stay flush with the tree so that we're not damaging it. So boiling the pitch, you don't want to boil the pitch directly. You're gonna use a double boiler system or a big and a small pot. So you put it in the small pot, the big pot has water in it, and the small pot goes into the big pot. I mix a little bit of oil right off the start, but you don't have to. You can wait till it melts down.
And give volunteers ideas of art they can create, or they come to me with their own ideas as well, which is great because it's very open to creativity, and our program is very youth driven. So we want to make sure that if you're our volunteer, that you're creating something that you're passionate about, and then we can then use that artwork to turn it into resources like this one here. Okay, so I'm going to stop screen sharing. Any questions so far? How are we doing for time? Okay, we're doing great for time. Perfect. Okay, so I just want to talk about the current projects that we are working on now. So I mentioned we've got invasive species posters that are being worked on. That wasn't a project that I had created. I had a volunteer, a Kamloops volunteer, come to me and say, hey, I created these 4 posters. And I was like, whoa, awesome. So we're hoping to expand that. She actually created her own design and drawings and everything, and then she's like, hey, do you want me to digitize them? And I'm like, yeah, awesome. And she sent those my way. So I'm hoping to expand those projects. Again, I mentioned the educational videos that artwork is being created for. Another resource that I'm working on is a Kamloops specific plant ID book, but I think it'd be great to have one also for the Lower Mainland or anywhere in BC. I know you can buy like plant ID books. I've got this one here. It's hard to see without the background. Here, I'll turn my background off and then you guys will be able to see it. Yeah. So there's also, do you have the Lower Mainland one, Rafa, or do you have the same one?
I think it's
Awesome.
the same one, maybe a different version.
Yeah, just a different version. So these are really good plant ID books, but they go out of print really quickly, they sell quickly, and they don't release more copies for like a few years, so they're really hard to get. So one thing that I wanted to do is like, okay, if you're going for a walk in this area of Kamloops, here's a plant ID guide. And it's, I also want drawings in there as well. So one of my volunteers, for example, she's currently working on an illustration of a ponderosa pine cone for me, because I'm going out and taking photos. She's going to be taking photos, and then we'll have photos, a short description, some artwork as well. So that's a great project we're working on. And then we also have an event coming up called Creative by Nature. It's the second in this series. So Isabel Gassor from the, I believe it's in, what's it called again? Got it here. She's from the Invasive Species Council of Metro Vancouver. She came on in April for a virtual event, and she talked about botanical illustrations. And she has these like amazing documents that she's created with like all different types of leaves. And she taught how to get started in botanical illustration, which I found very interesting. And we recorded it, so you can actually view that recording on our Facebook page, also on our YouTube. And then we have her coming on to do a session about painting botanicals, and she's going to be focusing on watercolors, as that's the medium she likes to use. But it'll be like, you can transfer it over if you like to use acrylics or pencils. And it's really cool because she's drawing live. So she uses like her computer and also her iPhone. So she has 2 different views, and she basically draws live and teaches illustrating. So that's coming up next Thursday. That is, I believe, the 18th of June. And that's a free event that anyone can sign up for. You don't have to be a volunteer with us. So there's also, I found a free art course online. So Rafa, I can send you that link too, to maybe send out to participants. It starts in July. One of the Count's volunteers, she signed up right away. I knew it was right up her alley. And the cool thing about that is the time she's spending on that course, she can actually put those hours towards volunteering. But enough for me. I want to hear about all of your ideas. So I'm going to pop a link into the chat for a Google document.
Yeah,
So
and make sure to send those links over afterwards,
Yeah,
and I can send it to everyone. That'd be great.
Awesome. That's great. So as you are not signed into Google, the comments are anonymous. Not that we're writing anything top secret, but just in case you want to, if you care. But I just put a couple of questions in there. So what nature-inspired art projects ideas do you have, and what types of invasive species art would you like to create? So if you just want to pop your ideas in there, and then either Sean or Leon, if one of you would like to share these ideas with the group when we jump back to the main room, that would be fantastic. I love seeing the ideas pop up in these documents. It makes me so happy. The mural project's great. Spore prints. I've never done that before. That'd be really cool. And the plant ID guided walks. Yeah, I know in Kamloops, my volunteers have been asking for those because we can't get together yet. So I love that idea. Infographic posters. Those are great. And the BC Plants coloring book. I love that idea. That's great.
I know one of the things that we're trying to figure out is what kind of art projects we can do in this weird COVID era.
Yeah, definitely. I guess if you're doing like a mural, one thing you could do, depending if you were having to do like the mural on the side of a building or not, but you could even take like, if you could do it on plywood, like nice, like finished plywood, you could cut out sections and then you could give each person a section to take home and paint, and you could put those all together.
Yeah, some kind of like mosaic style of
Yeah.
mural would be really cool.
That'd be awesome. I like the selling the artwork to raise money for restoring natural ecosystems. That's a great idea. And the Inktober inspired drawing event, that's awesome. Also, the using food scraps and plants to create natural fabric dyes. I never thought of that. That's a cool idea. And then the can you paint with blackberry juice? That one's interesting too. With the council, one thing we always talk about is like, there are people out there using invasive species for different uses, whether it's like weaving or paint. And one thing we often struggle with is how to do it so you're not creating a market for the plant. So it's like,
we wouldn't want them to be economically viable.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. But if it's, you know, it's definitely a good conversation to have.
It is about time to bring everyone back.
Sounds good.
FYI.
So Sean or Leon, which one of you would like to share our ideas?
I'd be okay doing it if
Awesome.
Leon, you don't want to.
Right. We'll see you back in the normal room.
Thanks.
That was so fast. I had so much more.
Apologize. We had to kind of cut it short there, but I do hope that everyone had a chance to wrap up a little bit.
So if anybody has questions for mine that I didn't get to, feel free to email them to me. And also that last question, I will find the answer, and I will also talk to some elders and see what they say traditionally about it, and get back to you.
Okay, thanks. Cool. We'll hand it back to, I believe it's Corbin to lead us into the debrief.
Yeah, debrief. That's a good word. I didn't actually have that in my notes. Thanks, Rafa. So yeah, it's debrief time. We didn't actually select a spokesperson in my room, so I'm hoping that'll happen organically. But if anyone is just itching to share a bit about their experience, now is a great time. And I'm just going to politely ask that you keep your remarks under 2 minutes. Brittany, you seem to have a good experience. Do you want to say a word?
I know, it was so much fun. So for anybody that wasn't in our little breakout session, Willie was giving us a rundown on how to harvest pine pitch responsibly without hurting the tree, and how to take that pitch, boil it down, hills to it, and beeswax, and create a medicinal salve that could be used on your skin. It could be used for your pets and to treat a variety of ailments. So super cool learning how to do that. Somebody's actually going to try and make some, I think it was Loretta that said, she's going to try and do it with coconut oil. So that's going to be a neat little experiment. And then Willie also said that in place of pine, you could use fir pitch, which is neat for me because interior BC, we have a lot of Douglas fir. And kind of, you may have heard Willie touching on it at the end, a look into what actual compound is in the pine pitch that's giving it those anti-inflammatory properties. So I think that's super cool because there's so many neat medicines in the mainstream and then in traditional medicine that are, they've kind of come from the same place. There's so much influence from traditional medicine in modern medicine, and it's nice to take it back to the roots of it. So I thought that was very cool.
Willie, we're going to have to get you to do another session so I can attend.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh, she had so much more to say. I think we're going to have a couple more of these.
I had so much more to say, but it was a lot of fun. I'm really happy that we got some people into it, and I hope people make medicine.
Well, we'll talk internally about a follow-up here, Willie, because it sounds like you've got more to say. So, and would anyone from Caitlin's room, Invasive Species Art? Thank you so much, Brittany, for the summary. But yeah, I'd like to see if anyone from Caitlin's room is willing to share.
Yeah. So basically, we talked about like invasive species and like an art of invasive species work that's already being done. We talked a bit about like drawing books and like people making resources for invasive species and tying that into art. So like having a coloring book with invasive species and you can color it in and learn a bit more, and having like word scrambled invasive species names, which I thought was really cool. Some of the projects that we sort of brainstormed later on was like a CTS wide mural project, spore prints, plant ID guided walks, which is really cool, like a BC plants drawing competition, invasive or otherwise, an Inktober inspired drawing event featuring different BC plants on like different days. So like it'd be like on one day there would be like blackberry, and then people could draw blackberry like as creatively as they want. Selling like plant artwork from BC to raise money for restoring natural ecosystems. Be really cool. Infographic posters, BC plants, coloring books, like I talked about. Plant pressing, yeah, that'd be really cool. And using food scraps and plants to create natural fabric dyes. And other things or other types of invasive art that in our group we talked about creating was one of our members said that as a graphic designer and illustrator, they'd want to create like a Lower Mainland plant-based ID book, which would be awesome. And another asked if you can paint with blackberry juice, which would also be really cool. But yeah, that's sort of like a summary of what we brainstormed. And I had a lot of fun.
Thanks, Sean, for sharing all that from our group.
Hey, is there any art that you guys can show us?
Some of it was shared in the presentation. I don't have it, but I guess Caitlin can put a link to it.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I can definitely share my screen quickly here, Sue, and show everyone what some of the Kamloops volunteers have been up to.
While you do that, Caitlin, can you paint with blackberry juice? Did that question get answered?
I'm not sure. I've never tried.
Yes, you can.
You can.
But the color is a little bit fugitive, which means it doesn't stay forever. You have to protect it from light. But yeah, for sure. Ink making, it's fabulous.
Okay, can everyone see the slide? Awesome, great. So here is a few art pieces. The one on the left-hand side on the top, Ava created that. That is a color illustration of invasive Himalayan blackberry. So this illustration has kind of gone on a really cool journey because it was first created for a coloring sheet. So Ava drew it out in pencil and then she digitized it and we turned it into a coloring sheet resource. And then recently, one of our other volunteers based in Lower Mainland is creating educational videos. And this volunteer asked for illustrations to be included in that video. So Ava very quickly was like, yeah, I'll put some color into it. And that's what she came up with. And then below that, she also created a coloring sheet for American bullfrogs, which are also an invasive species. And then over to the top middle, that's another illustration of a American bullfrog. And Lauren created 2 other illustrations of invasive animal species that were then turned into a word scramble resource that Sean mentioned. And then below that, Amanda created this illustration of invasive zebra mussels. And this project was really exciting for her because we actually put this picture in our ISC annual report. So that was the first time that Amanda had had her artwork published. So for her, this was like a really exciting, amazing experience. And for me personally, it was exciting because I actually encouraged her to join as a volunteer because she wants to pursue environmental art. So for me, this was great to see how inspired she was to create this piece. And then Lauren on the right, this was recently created. This is a watercolor painting of invasive Japanese knotweed. So just a few little art selections. One of our ideas in Kamloops, we're hoping to eventually, maybe next year, is to host an invasive species art exhibit at the local art gallery. And this will be a great way to teach people about invasive species that aren't interested in the environment. So we're hoping that they just kind of go to the art gallery and be like, oh, what's this? Oh my gosh, it's invasive. We need to now learn about biodiversity and protect BC's wild spaces. So just a really cool way that art can educate others that aren't already interested in science and nature. It's a great bridge between the 2 backgrounds.
Based on the images I'm seeing there and the incredible list of brainstorming ideas, I'm going to say that was one creative room. With that, Damien or Sarah, would you like to share a bit about our conversation in the neighborhood stewardship room?
Yeah, so we saw this really inspiring video about neighborhood stewardship at the pop-up garden and this intertidal zone being restored. And then we just chatted a bit about how to do local stewardship opportunities. Sarah, do you want to speak up to that?
Yeah, Damien shared some of, I asked him to say, what are you doing? And so I got to learn, we got to learn about the project that Damien's been working on to remove the blackberry, and particularly the challenges, but also now that it's come full circle, the challenges of navigating who are your support people, what agencies or what groups do you want to partner with, and who are identifying who the stakeholders are in an area. And and just that it takes a long time. And then, although the invasives can spread quickly, like in 10 years, and then they can also be removed with a sort of long-term but persistent vision. Yeah. Really inspiring.
Yeah, and Sarah's work trying to get her own local stewardship started and having some trouble figuring out how to deal with all of those agencies there. So it really can be tough and confusing sometimes, but you just gotta find the right support and go through with it.
And we're grateful to Damien's lived and worked experience that he can share with us here. That was an awesome room. I'm glad to have taken part in that. I guess it's just time to say thanks. I hope you all had a good time today, and I hope that this was an educational and inspiring event for you. I think that for those of you that came looking for ideas or looking for some direction, hopefully you've put a bit of a foundation into whatever your next moves are. And if you are interested for ongoing support with what you're doing, or you'd like to learn more about invasive species, you can always sign up for our volunteer program, bcinvasives.ca/volunteer. It sounds like there might be some interest in a follow-up event here as well, so we are going to discuss that. We'd love to hear back from anyone who's been working on projects and maybe we can do medicinal plants part 2 at that point as well. So I'd like to invite my co-facilitators here if they'd like to say anything in closing.
I just want to say thank you. Like, it's really difficult for me to present on Zoom. It's super new. I'm used to teaching where I have like a classroom of kids, and it's way more fun. So I'm still learning the Zoom thing, so I'm a little nervous. I'm a very fast speaker, but you guys are really kind and really nice, and that was exciting. And don't forget to send me a mailing address so I can send you some beeswax and pitch.
And I just want to say a quick thank you as well to all the participants and to CTS for having us here for this event. And it was just really awesome having everyone come together virtually and learn about invasive species and to share lots of really interesting ideas moving forward.
Thanks again, everyone. And yeah, thank you to Rafa and the CTS team. I think I'll hand it back to you at this point, but we are so glad that you were able to host us today.
I think I have a huge thanks back to you, really, for putting this all together and helping us and shedding to light some of the information on invasives. I'm going to do kind of what we've been doing for a lot of our Zoom calls is everyone's going to get unmuted for the next 5 seconds. And if you guys want to just show your appreciation for ISCBC for putting this together and helping us out and showing us a lot of information. Yeah, ready. It's been really incredible. So yeah, for 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1. Everyone's unmuted. Good job. Thank you.
Standing ovation.
Yay. And you can also click gallery view and see everybody that's on at once.
Yeah. And if people want to say hi and all that, give it a wave, give it a clap. Yeah.
Whoa.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Sweet. This was so fun.
Awesome. Yeah. And so, yeah, final round of thank yous again to ISCBC. Really appreciate you coming in and presenting to our youth. So unless there's anything else from our facilitators, I think that's it for the day. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time on Spotlight Series. We'll see if anybody else wants to join. If anybody has anything of interest that they want to see for the next Spotlight Series, feel free to send me an email at info@catchingthespirit.com. Yeah, appreciate everyone's join and hope everyone has a good day. All right. Cheers, y'all.
Bye.